The city's busiest intersection was a chaos of honking cars, rushing crowds, and layers of dust. There, leaning against the wall of an ancient temple, an old man sat every day. His clothes were tattered and filthy, his long beard unkempt, and his gray hair a tangled mess. Before him lay an old, rusted tin bowl. People called him Fakira. Some would toss a coin or two out of pity, while others would pass by with a look of utter disdain. A group of young men would often mock him, saying, "Hey, old man, you still look strong enough to work. Why are you begging?" Fakira never replied. He would simply sit with his head bowed, his eyes fixed on the ground as if searching for a lost treasure buried deep within the earth. The moment his bowl filled with coins, he would silently rise and disappear into the labyrinth of the city's narrow alleys. No one knew where he went. Raghu, a 12-year-old boy, watched him every day. Raghu couldn't go to school due to poverty. He spent his days collecting plastic and scrap metal to survive. He felt a deep curiosity about Fakira. There was a certain dignity in the old man's silence that set him apart from ordinary beggars. One day, unable to contain his curiosity, Raghu decided to follow him. As Fakira began his slow walk through the city, Raghu followed like a shadow. After crossing the outskirts, Fakira stopped in front of a dilapidated, abandoned house in a slum. Raghu hid behind a wall and peered inside. What he saw took his breath away. The interior wasn't dark. Instead, it was filled with the light of knowledge. About 60 to 70 orphaned children in worn-out clothes were sitting on the dusty floor, studying with slates and pencils. An elderly woman was helping them. As soon as Fakira entered, the children erupted in joy. "Grandpa is here! Grandpa is here!" Fakira took out the collected coins from his ragged bag and handed them to the woman. In a tired voice, he said, "Amma, this is all I could gather today. Please get milk and notebooks for the children tomorrow." With tears in her eyes, the old woman placed her hand on Fakira's head and said, "Fakira, you don't care for your own body. This world can never repay the debt of your sacrifice." Fakira smiled faintly and replied, "I am not making a sacrifice, Amma. I am repaying a debt." Raghu could no longer hold himself back. He stepped forward and stood before them with folded hands. In a trembling voice, he asked, "Grandpa, who are you? Why have you taken up this life of begging?" Fakira remained silent for a while, looking up at the sky. Then, with a long sigh, he said, "My real name is Ranveer Singh. Once, I was the biggest industrialist in this city. I had immense wealth, luxury cars, and the arrogance of power. But the fire of my arrogance once burnt many innocent lives to ashes." Ranveer continued, 10 years ago, I forcibly occupied the land of an orphanage to build my factory. That very night, a short circuit caused a massive fire. My factory survived, but many children in the neighboring orphanage lost their lives. With my wealth, I escaped the law, but I couldn't escape my conscience. Whenever I looked in the mirror, I heard the screams of those children. So, one day, I kicked away all my riches and chose this path. To atone for my sins, I became a beggar to provide a future for these children." Raghu stood frozen. The man who was once a multimillionaire was now sacrificing his dignity to bring light to the lives of orphans. A few years later, a devastating flood hit the city. The low-lying areas were submerged. Fakira's little school was on the verge of sinking. Without a thought for his own life, Ranveer Singh waded through chest-deep water, rescuing every child and carrying them to safety. But after saving the last child, his frail, exhausted body could no longer fight the current. He was swept away. The next day, when the lifeless body of Fakira, alias Ranveer Singh, was recovered, the entire city gathered at the hospital. The headlines read, "The Angel Among Us, the final journey of a multimillionaire beggar." The very people who once looked at him with disgust were now shedding tears. Though Ranveer passed away, his legacy lived on. Following his final wish, Raghu and the citizens came together to establish the Ranveer Foundation. That old ruin is now a grand orphanage and school. Moral: never judge a person by their clothes or profession. To be a true hero, one does not need power, only a heart large enough to bleed for others. Thanks for watching.